Yeah. Hello again. It's Chad Everett Broshears, the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And today's episode, episode 13, is with Dani, Dani McVety. And she's a doctor of veterinary medicine, and she's also the co-founder or founder of Lap of Love Hospice Care. So with that, I'm going to have Dr. Dani expand a little bit on my very terse introduction.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks. And thanks for asking me to be on your show, too. I started Lap of Love Veterinary Hospice with another veterinary good friend of mine, Dr. Mary Gardner. And to make a long story short, it was just supposed to be kind of a side thing for us. And it ended up really turning into something that people wanted and they loved and that we enjoyed doing also. And so that combination kind of made for a really great business model. And we've been able to expand it. And the legal definition of what we are is a franchise. So that just means that we work with different veterinarians around the country that are their own business entity. And we have about 70 partners now around the country. And we love what we do. And it's been a really great journey over the past few years.
That's fantastic. So you guys started the franchise, and now you're up to over 70 veterinarians affiliated with you through that franchise. Oh, so that definitely shows that the populace wants this service. There's no doubt about it. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about what the service entails so that we can...
So we do all in-home end-of-life care. So everything we do is based in the home. And it's strictly end-of-life care, so hospice and euthanasia. And when we first started, it really was supposed to be just hospice care and fluid management and wound therapy. And I volunteered for human hospice when I was in college, so I had a really good idea of what they did. So that was the idea, is that I wanted to bring that into the veterinary world. I did emergency medicine, so I really saw the need and the desire for that. And when it kind of evolved into what it is now, which is a good majority of it is in-home euthanasia. And really that's just because that's what clients ask of us. And then everything leading up to that is helping the families make the decision. And so from the business perspective, we do a lot of hand-holding with the families. And that's, if you ask me and Dr. Mary and the partners that work with us, that's probably where we shine the most, is really helping people through the decision-making process, how to make the decision for euthanasia, if that's what we're going to do, and when, where, why, all that stuff. And it's incredibly fulfilling. I mean, it's a part of medicine that a lot of people don't get. A lot of doctors don't get that kind of fulfillment from what they do every day. We're taught to treat the disease in medicine and fight the disease and fight for the cure and all this stuff. And a lot of times we're not taught how to treat the patient, which is a different way. But hospice care, end-of-life care, is treating the patient and supporting the family through the decision-making process, through the end-of-life experience, so that they have a good, peaceful end-of-life closure. And my, totally unbiased opinion, is that if we have a peaceful end-of-life closure like that, if that process is done properly, that the families are able to open their heart and home to another pet sooner. They're back in the pet owning population sooner. They're saving these thousands and thousands of dogs and cats from, unnecessary euthanasia, strictly from overpopulation. So that's kind of the little way in which I hope that we get to change the world through this type of work.
Well, that's fantastic. And it's, to me, when I was first introduced to what you do, I thought for a moment, is there really a market for it? And then I realized, as I thought more about it, my relationship with my own pets and my history, and my pets have always been family members. They're not just like, I'm a dog owner, right? I've always been, this is they've always been referenced as being my little girl or my little boy, or right. It's always a deep bonding conversation and context when I introduce that entity, right? My little bundle of wonderfulness. It's always had that relationship value. So as I thought more about, like, how would I deal with, the loss of one of my animals, and one of my little family members, I've lost other family members, and their service is well established to take care of that, but not with the ones that actually depend on us with a great deal of need, more so than, say, the standard family member was independent, more so than some of our little, our companions.
Yeah,
I
they
keep
have
looking
all
down
this,
because sugar bear's right there.
yeah, they're staring at you as you say that, right? Yeah, and I, it's interesting because, our animals have moved kind of from the barnyard, then to the backyard, and then into our living rooms, and then into our bedrooms, and like they are literally under our sheets now. I mean, they're
Yeah.
literally under our sheets. Like sometimes the spouses don't get to sleep in the same bed, but the dog is gonna sleep there. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
so they're increasing in importance. If you just look over the past few decades, how important animals have become in society. And I know that they'll continue to increase in importance. I mean, there's some attorneys out there trying to even get them to be sentient beings. They're not really even property, because from a legal perspective, pets are considered property. And whether or not that would go anywhere, I don't know. But we're literally in the past few years, judges are awarding for emotional damage for like if someone improperly I don't know, hits a dog or something like that, if it was on purpose, or joint custody for people that are separated. I mean, there's these things that are just showing how important animals are becoming in society. And you're right, I mean, it's a natural progression that we treat humans in a particular way at end of life. And how are we going to do it for pets also? And there's the one major difference that we have euthanasia, of course, so that'll always be different, at least for now, in the sense that we make that for a different being in veterinary medicine. But there's also the case that you just said at the end, which is we are responsible for their happiness in a way, right? I think that if you ask them, they may say the opposite. They may say that they are responsible for our happiness, but in a way, we are responsible for watching out for them in a similar way that we are for our children. But as a child, as a mother, I'm the guardian of my children. I'm not their owner. So we have an even greater responsibility, if you want to look at it just on paper, for our pets, because we have to make that choice for them. We have to choose medical processes for them. We choose for them. We are their voice. So it is. It's and it's a huge honor that we all have as pet owners, if you will, to make that choice for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, they don't fill little voids in our lives for no reason, right? Or it's not even always a void in our life. It's sometimes a conditioning part.
Yeah.
It's if there ever were to be put into place a maturity assessment for becoming a parent, I would think that it would be inside of, introducing a pet with specific limitations into someone's home. If we really wanted to try doing something like that, rather than some sort of test where we tell people who cannot and cannot have children off of a paper form.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard that in my history too, where people are like, yeah, we should have tests so that we know if these idiots are breeding and blah, blah, blah. And these people, just because they're biologically capable of having children, why are they? They're not, they're only affecting all of us and all of this nonsense. But, there's plenty of people out there that just don't have the maturity to foster a very healthy home for themselves, let alone their animals. So, if ever there were something that could be reached, I would hope to encourage people to want to develop themselves to a purpose of, how is it beneficial to really learn to take good care of an animal, as well as, I say animals, if it's a separation between human beings and animals, we're all still part of the animal kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just think that that's a great testimony to human beings, how they treat their animals and how much they actually care for their animals or their endeared pets.
Right. It's true. I think it was Gandhi that said I guess the value of a society is, based on how they treat the least among them, and also the animals. But yeah, it's really interesting. And people will say all the time, that do they have souls, and that kind of stuff, that real spiritual aspect that we get to be part of. And it's interesting because I'll actually tell families like, I think that they're more pure in a lot of ways than we are. Like they are here on purpose. Every day you look at an animal's life and they are on purpose. And even if that purpose is as simple as eating at that moment, as going outside, as sunbathing, as making you happy, as wagging their tail and playing ball. I mean, look at a dog play ball. Who works in our job every day like a dog plays ball?
Right.
On purpose, 100% for that reason, with nothing made up about the ball and about what it means and about whether or not I catch it. I'm a failure because I didn't catch it. Like all that stuff. I mean, right, you think like we laugh about it, but yet we do that. That's how we live.
Oh yeah. Oh
live
yeah.
all that
Absolutely.
stuff made up, and then take it to the next level of watching animals die. And
Mm.
every animal dies differently. Every disease process is different. Every human comes into this world differently, right? Every birthing process is different. Every death process is different. And it's incredible to look them in the eye when they are dying. And the reason I say that, even though that is so very powerful, is because they don't live their life for someone else, in someone else's shoes, made up about what someone else is thinking, feeling. They care about what we think and feel. They're there for us. They're engaged with us. They're connected to us. They yawn when we yawn. But they are so pure in their whole experience of life, including their experience of death. And it's
Yeah.
really an amazing thing. I have learned way more from animals than I ever thought I could possibly teach anybody else, or that I went to vet school to learn about animals, just about the medicine, but I've learned so much about myself spiritually by watching them. It's really
Yeah.
incredible.
I can get that too, because, finding yourself and everything else is kind of a journey that we all share. Just not everyone has the understanding that that's a benefit that
It's there, right?
makes us more
Mirrors.
whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what inspired you to move towards this? Because it's, you're self-made, right? It's not like somebody stepped in and told you, Dani, you're going to be a veterinarian. And not only are you going to be a veterinarian, you're going to create a successful franchise with, building out of compassion, for the end of life, for animals, and also for people's experiences. So what was it that got you really to look at this as a direction with your life?
I've lived my entire life. I've been honored enough to have an amazing mom. So my mom has really been a spiritual kind of beacon for me in my life. And my dad has just been this incredible entrepreneur that I've watched. Both my parents were extremely good entrepreneurs. So I always had a little bit of that fire in me, that I worked really, really well with others, but I don't always work well for others. As long as I am really driven in what I'm doing and I'm on purpose, I'm really good at that, working with others. I'm super good at that. And if you want to go all the way back, I want to be a veterinarian because there's nothing else I ever wanted to be more than a veterinarian. I looked at different things, maybe this, maybe that. My parents didn't go to college. They were business people. And I grew up with horses. I loved the horses. I had just as much fun cleaning a stall as I did on the back of a horse. And so I thought that there was nothing else in my life I wanted to do more. And even though I went, back and forth through undergrad, and then I volunteered for human hospice, which was just one of those things that came into my life, and I had no idea at the time why it was coming into my life. But I thought, I've never had a big loss in my life. This is just something that I should do now. I just need to do it. And I did it, and it was incredible. Human hospice treats the end of life in a way that we are not taught to in society, in a way that I imagine that Aboriginal people treated death, generations ago, which is a respect. It's a respect.
Mm-hmm.
Death is the opposite of birth, is not the opposite of life. And so that really opened my eyes to a different way of thinking, and then got into veterinary school. And just like all veterinarians, I was intelligent enough to get in, and through undergrad I was able to pull an all-nighter and get an A or B in a class. But then you go to vet school and it's like, holy cow, there's not enough time to get through the material. It was really tough. And to make a long story short, I failed nutrition my first year in vet school, and I got held back a year. And, that was a huge blow at the time. You're 21 years old and you get held back in a medical profession. You're supposed to be the cream of the crop, and now you're basically told you're the dumbest one in the class and you got to repeat. That's my experience of what it was at the time. And I just started kind of honing in on the things that I was really, really good at. And getting A's in every single class is not what I was really, really good at. And I'm really glad that I figured that out, because I started my communication journey then. I always had a bit of it from my mom and a bit of it from my dad. And I started diving even more into the communication, the spiritual realm of what medicine is in general. And by the time I got out, I was doing emergency medicine because I wanted time with my family, and I just wanted that type of lifestyle. I didn't want to be in like some, 4-walled room, clinic doing the same thing over and over again. And there are veterinarians that do well at that. That just was never me. I just never wanted to do general practice. But I love the intensity of emergency medicine. I still do. I loved it. I loved walking into a room with a family completely at desperate ends, whether or not it's a hangnail or whether or not it was, a surgical procedure. Like, I would walk into a room with total, crazy emotions, and I just by my presence, I was able to calm them down, talking them through. And I was, it was also gotten like, you be the change. Like, I learned to be what I needed in them, be the calm, be empathetic, be kind, shed a tear with them. And I was really good at that. I was really good at the communication, the end of life, the making the decision. In emergency medicine, I don't have 30 minutes for you to make a decision sometimes. I need that decision done right now so that we can both do what we both are here to do, which is save your pet. And I loved it. I loved it. And so I just kind of branched off, and I started doing a side thing, Lap of Love. And within a year, I had called my friend, Dr. Mary Gardner. I'm like, I need a software. We've got to do this. And I'm having veterinarians call me, and they don't know how to set it up either. And I'm, trying to do everything at once. And we decided there was a huge opportunity to bring this everywhere. And so we did.
Well, it's fantastic. And it's a very brief journey into your history, but it definitely is impactful. It's a lot of times a lot of people have this authority, this authority figure that they actually have to get the okay from. And it's okay to go to college, or it's okay to do this. And if they don't hear it, that trigger doesn't go off in their mind that gives them permission to do it. And it's wonderful to get people to actually relate to anyone who's created success in any area, so that they can see the potential they have for themselves and stop living, in a self-created mediocrity.
God, you're so right. And even when I got held back, and it was, you really have to take a look at that. Why am I here? What am I doing this for? Am I going to continue to put myself through this pain and this misery? And every step of the way, this was for me. And I wouldn't have lasted. I wouldn't have gotten this far ever. And I see it in other veterinarians and even medical students. And I mean, shoot, regardless of what profession you are, if they're not doing it on that purpose, you're right. You have to do it strictly because it's your internal compass only.
And that's a thing that not everybody has. We all have it. It's kind of like buying a computer that has all kinds of programs on it, and it just requires that you open it and you actually explore the program in order to understand how to best to use it and when to use it. And most people don't get off their desktop, and they can find their Windows, their Internet Explorer or whatever, but that's about all they actually know how to do anything in life. And I really enjoy any way to kind of short circuit, if you will, create a shortcut, add a new icon to their desktop,
right.
Which gets them involved with their own life. And that's something that a lot of people spend so much time measuring themselves against others that's all they really create is a capacity of efficiency is, oh, I'm really good at measuring myself against other people. And if that internal compass is present, it's not really a measurement against them, but a measurement to find out what you don't possess in order to achieve your goal. That would be a distinction that I would add into that internal compass. Because a lot of people lack really direction, period, in any developmental aspects of maturity. And as that's what the series is designed for, is to start showing some influences of inspiring people to, yes, this is possible. This is what these people have gone through. And, your story is great because it's like, it's just kind of like the fishbowl you've been swimming in for a long time. It's one, obviously you had a great deal of your own choosing, and cognitive choosing, like you chose it purposely, which really gave a wonderful road ahead of you. Where other, you're one of the few people. Now, did you personally develop this completely out of basically you saw a need, but there was no other company doing this when you started, correct?
No, nothing. It was just did it. Ready, Fire, Aim. It's my favorite business book also, Ready, Fire, Aim. I just did it.
Love it. Yeah. Well, what that is, it's its own distinction, right? It's like there's self-made, but like truly self-made and not modified by. Because a lot of people in, business skill training and all the rest of this will tell people, find out someone else is doing something successful and make what they do better. And that's going to give you your success. But you're not that equation, at all, right? It's just, you saw a need and you filled the need, which is, the mother of invention. The mother of invention is necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So that's the blue ocean, right? You hear that?
what's that?
The blue ocean concept.
Oh, no. I don't
Well,
know if I've heard that.
and I think that it's the title of another book called The Blue Ocean, meaning that there's these two oceans, the one in which a whole bunch of sharks are swimming around and eating at each other, and that's the red, bloody ocean. But there's the blue ocean where nobody is. And it was really interesting, when I first started, I just had to make every tiny little decision based on what was working, with me, what was working with my clients, and nobody knew that other than me. And
Right.
it was literally just step by step of ask an attorney this, ask an accountant this, ask somebody, a business mentor this, ask them that. But in the end, it had to be filtered through my brain to move forward. And then when when Mary and I partnered up, because I started it here in Tampa, just this little side thing, and then when Mary and I partnered up together, that's when we really blossomed, because she made up for my deficiencies and my strengths complemented hers really well. And it turned into this amazing kind of partnership that is probably the best example of a symbiotic relationship, where 1 + 1 is 3, not a 1 + 1 is 1.5. And it has worked out so well. But you're right, it has to be, particularly when you're going to make something that no one else has done before, and that's difficult, right? That's harder than just doing something someone else is doing already and just doing it more efficiently, or making more money at it, whatever. And it is way different when you make something from scratch, because you have to be, and I've said this again, you have to be so on purpose. You have to know exactly what you're doing and filter each of your mentor's information in through your own brain, and then put it out based on what you know about the business experience. And you have to stand up for it. Mary and I have had to stand up for things when no one else on our team thought that it was a good idea, when no attorney thought it was a good idea, when no accountant thought it was a good idea. Her and I would go back drawing board, we're like, but this is what works. We know our clients, we know our business target market, we know our client base, we know the patients, we know our industry, and we have to be so confident about that, because if not, it's gonna be lost.
Innovation doesn't take
Say that again. Innovation what?
I said innovation doesn't take place in the vacuum. It comes by way of necessity, and it's what you're explaining. And you also hit on something very key for me that really excites. It excites me every time I find that other people know this particular. A lot of entrepreneurs have it in their mind, like, let's say, like, make a distinction of when I mean a lot of entrepreneurs, less successful entrepreneurs. And knowing, like, if anybody's caught this video or caught my series of videos before this, understand that when I measure success, it's always by the individual, not by some other concept or general concept of success. So what I find that a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, when I first started my company over 5 years ago, actually 7 years ago, my company, like, I really thought I was going to do it all myself. Like, I can't afford to get an accountant, so I'll do it myself. I'm actually mathematically proficient, so I'm fine with that. All right. And I even had people in my life at the time were like, "Oh, Chad, you're a very smart guy. I'm sure you can do these things, and you can do them all yourself. So I imagine your outsourcing budget's going to be pretty small because you don't need to." Right. Now I've matured to the point of recognizing that mentors are key.
Yeah.
Authority guidance in the form of an agreement called mentorship. And that's something that I find that, you mentioned it, but we really weren't, like, it was a quick, brief mention, but those individuals played a larger role in your life. They didn't do this for you. They offered you the information necessary for you to make a decision in order to achieve your goal. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And it's rare. Rare in the populace, but then again, what we consider successful people are not common people, unfortunately, not in the general sense.
Right. It's interesting. I started asking that question to a lot of actually a lot of the mentors and a lot of the business people that I really respected, and even bankers and people that I would come in contact that I respected, with their opinion. I would actually ask them. I say, when you're dealing with people that are running large companies, like huge, big companies, think of like the top 3 successful people that what mistakes do they make? What things do they do well? what would you, from your perspective, Mr. CPA, what would you say from your seat they should do better, that they do, improperly? And there was one common thread that I got to tell you is that they said that the people that don't grow as quickly as they could don't lean on the people around them, meaning they think that they are going to do everything, and they let their ego get in the way. That word came out a lot. These people were telling me the ego got in the way. And I thought that was very interesting, because it was, and even now, like, as we get bigger and stuff, we've had to hire more people. And Mary and I always say, we're like, I'm going to hire people that do these things better than I do. And that's what we do. And then lean on them and not micromanage them. And that's been something that her and I both have learned how to do, is hire the people that do things better than us, trust them, have a fantastic relationship with them. We are such like a really tight-knit group. And it's just been one of the best things for us as far as growing, is not letting our ego get in the way. And yes, knowing the business and knowing these things, but also the small decisions, smaller decisions, we've got to lean on our team to do.
Yeah.
So we're learning that.
Right. Well, it's all part of what I would call community maturity.
Yes.
And it's recognizing who you are in your community, and also who the people in your community are. And then the relationship continues to move around like a multiplier, which is now who are you to those people, and then who are those people to you, and what skill sets are you in or exchanging, and why or why not. But something you'd mentioned also is what other people's failures are. And to kind of add one more perspective to whenever that question's asked, is what were the solutions that came out of their failure?
Yeah.
Because some people give up. They hit a hard spot. They may go from a $500,000 budget to, under, 100, 250,000 below, in the red the following year. And that may be it for them. They're like, okay, emotionally, I'm taxed out. I'm backing away, close doors on business, and file bankruptcy. Right. But the reality is that every lesson that shows up is there's a system we're trying to behave inside of. If you don't recognize the system, you may still pick up on some of its patterns. And if you don't recognize those patterns, then it's going to be a little more challenging for you, because so few people fall through the right holes. Mm-hmm. Right. And most of it is a very intentional direction, which is, we all know that once you start something, especially as complex as making a successful franchise, is that whatever you thought it was going to look like in the beginning, it doesn't look that way at the end. Whenever you get to the point where we can qualify 70, franchisees being a success marker. So it didn't look like that whenever you first, envisioned the idea. And now look at it, right?
Yeah, it's funny. People say, what's your 5-year plan? And I say, 5-year plan? I mean, I can tell you it may be, but really what's much more important is the 2, 3, 6-month plan. That's way more important to me, because that's where we're going,
Yeah. If I ever create the distinction of a 5-year plan, I call it a living plan, which is not like how you're going to live inside of it, but the plan itself develops its own entity, right, where it allows to grow and mature, rather than us kind of trying to force it as a tiger in a cage at the circus. And we want it to perform the same way every time. It doesn't, and it won't. Eventually it'll just, escape and do what it does. So I would reference it being a living plan, because inside of that comes this whole new direction and distinctions of every 6 months, just like the human body, every 6 months, factors shift. Your cravings can change due to nutritional needs, and the once good food for you becomes something that's more of a Trojan horse due to the saturation of those particular nutrients. Well, the same thing plays in all of this universal thing we call life. The formulas continue to stay similar, but the variables are different. So if we want to create something successful, it's give it the permission to grow. And I see that you've obviously done that, because you're a fairly stress-free individual. Now, being completely stress-free would be the distinction of,
That's so funny to hear you say that. It's a choice, right, Chad? I mean, that is a choice. Stress is a choice.
Right, but at the same time, there's also the concept of delusional avoidance of stress, or optimism.
Delusional avoidance of stress. Was that equals optimism? That's what you're saying?
We haven't had that conversation yet. I think we'll have some interesting discourse. Yes, I'm not a big fan of optimism as it's traditionally taught. But yeah,
I love optimism as it is traditionally taught. I love it. I think that it is all a choice, and whether or not I get stressed and tired, and yes, and every time I do, I look at it and I say, oh, I love my job. I love what I do. And it's not even work-life balance. This is life balance, or work-life integration, or whatever you want to call it now. You know, it is all who I am. And even when I'm stressed, I think, my God, I am constantly pulled between things that I absolutely freaking love. Right. That is a really good problem, you know?
Okay. Well, it's almost like cognitive dissonance by saying a really good problem. But no.
Yeah, that's the
what I mean. By the way,
opportunity. We don't see really problems at Lap of Love, but we don't have a problem. We have a problem. No, we have an area of opportunity.
Yes.
Area of opportunity.
Yes. Well, absolutely. Right. Because if it's ever showing up that it's a challenge, it's meaning that you don't have the thought out process at this point is not it's not building the bridge to the solution it was intended to be. So now we have to remanufacture this bridge, use a form of the material intended, and end up with the desired result, which is crossing that void, right? By the way, just so I add another little piece to it, by me saying anything about optimism, I'm not jumping on the pessimism boat.
Are you not?
I am not. I'm neither. I have no attachment to either one of those concepts, other than occasionally I get a little optimistic about things, and occasionally I'll look at things a little differently. But I don't actually assess or address myself identifiably by either direction. Just so that's there, I'd rather say, okay, there's a challenge present, and the only thing that can be between me and success in that challenge is knowledge, functional knowledge, experience, etc. So that's my viewpoint, and that's what I prefer to teach my students, which I find is a great functionality. But still, it's whatever your default is perfectly fine. It's so I hope that didn't come across as an attack in any way.
No, I don't experience nothing as attack. I just think it's interesting. You know, because why take anything personally? No, I've like not at all, not in the least. I just thought it was super interesting that I don't always get to challenge you on something. So
believe me, if you ever want to go on and do a video on that, right? By the way, there's a video I'm going to encourage you to join me in, because inside of veterinary education, I'm sure you guys went over at least the reptilian mammalian brain, or with your desired direction of education itself, and how I know you to be. I would say that you've come across that education, the evolution of the brains. And I would love to have you on a show specifically for my book that I started writing, In Defense of the Ego. I would love to have you on that one.
Cool. Okay.
This particular conversation, that would be a digression, because this really is. It's for anyone that ever were to witness something and think, like the workability formula that I offered earlier with what were their failures. Ask the additional question, what was the success of that failure? Which is what that requires long-term care for that person's experience of life, which is what we all intend to impart when we share something with someone. I'd like to be able to enroll you in my life to a degree. And if I share my problems with you, I'd also want you to understand my solutions and my triumphs over those challenges. That creates more of a depth to the relationship between you and the other person. And we always have these opportunities all around us. And that's, enrollment, like how enrolled are you in their life?
Yeah, exactly.
So that workability formula. And whenever you experience somebody else having a disagreement, most people are confrontation avoiders. They do everything they can to avoid confrontation. And I find that would be that interesting conversation on paradigms of optimism versus pessimism, and which is the more realistic, which I throw in the curveball, the third option. But yeah, for another video, I'll pull back.
Right. Okay.
But how we actually view like disagreements between people. Personally, I see the disagreement as an opportunity to create solution. But before I can create solution, there's data required. Like I need to understand both parties, like what their disagreement is, rather than fabricate it and then side with one because they're more aesthetically appealing for whatever reason, if it's an attractive woman or, a physique guy like myself or whatever, and I'm like, I'd rather side with that dude because he looks more like me.
Right.
Or she looks like my mother, so she's got my vote, right? Like as if it's some sort of presidential debate. But for me, I'd rather look at it from the solution factors. What's going on? And then as I get curious about what's occurred in their lives, I always ask that question, especially if they're consulting with me, is, okay, well, first off, what's the upset? Get the information for the upset. Then I asked individually, what is your concept of success? As I asked individually, because if you ask them together, a lot of times the stronger partner would have the only answer, because the other partner may actually adopt just because the other one's stronger. I'd rather ask independently or individually.
Right.
But,
so let's actually bring that into end of life care. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the hardest decisions, that people kind of sometimes have to make for their pet. I mean, literally I hear this all the time, is this is the hardest decision I've ever had to make. And so if I'm going to coach somebody through how we're going to make that decision, the very first thing that I do is, just like you said, Chad, is listen to them. What are your desires? What do you want? What do you expect? Do you expect your 18-year-old Yorkie to live another 5 years? Well, let's rein in those expectations so that we're all on the same page. When I started doing hospice care and really evolving my communication, I even got body language certified, to teach body language, because I love that nonverbal and verbal also communication. The words we use are very important for the message that we're describing and sending. So that's, and just like you said, the thing that I have found interesting to me is that the better that I've gotten in medicine and in just communication in general, the more that I listen and the less that I talk. Because the more that I can listen to someone else's viewpoint, the more information I have about them. And the better that I can talk to them, talk to their position, really, and to their interests. So having an interest-based decision versus having a positional-based decision, right? So some people's position is, I want my dog to live to be 25 years old. Well, that position can't be withheld easily, right? Can I try to do that? Perhaps, maybe, but we're all, what is it? Expectations are premeditated resentments, right?
Right.
So we can have a position, or we can have an interest. What's your interest? How about the interest being your pet can live for as happy as he can possibly be, for as long as he possibly can. That's an interest I can get behind as a veterinarian. I can be successful with you in that interest. So getting back to that like literally on the same side as them. What are your concerns? What can I do? What can't I do? And then be able to deliver on those things also. And explain, like, you have to go into those, from my perspective as a veterinarian, I have to go into those conversations detached from the outcome. Completely detached. I cannot be positional that I'm going to win this quote battle, right, for the pet, so that the pet doesn't have to continue suffering or whatever it is. I can't go in that way. I have to go in with, let's support the interest, support the interest, support the interest, support the interest, just constantly on that same side with the family, interest based, and then that's where we win. And it's another, and we can talk about this later if you want, but it's a little bit of a beef that I actually have with my profession also, which is this idea of euthanasia, and whether or not we're going to walk into a room and really support what the family is asking of us, and support it in a way that relieves them of the guilt, and then therefore upholds our profession in a way that doesn't leave the families with that kind of guilt just because we can't take it on ourselves. I think that we are responsible for what we do, the medication that we give, the fact that we take life. We have to take that. And more importantly, I think we have to take that from the family. We have to take that from them so that it's not theirs, so that they are able to kind of continue on. And I just think that's huge amounts, but that's neither here nor there. It's a totally separate conversation. But
yeah, it's still valuable though.
Yeah.
Because it's still like anything that we can bring to light of awareness and understanding for any viewers, either if it's today or whenever they actually view the video, anything we can do to inspire people to understand. Because if there's a veterinarian that's watching it and finds that the disagreements are like-minded with you compared to the basically kind of some of the industry, in a sense, then they're going to be inspired to seek you out, at least if nothing else, just to know that there's another option or other people that are in their corner.
Right.
So,
just something else.
So,
just a different way of thinking about it, a different way of looking at it, a different way of helping people. And it's just a different way of helping people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the whole point of this entire series is how can we inspire to help, and what kind of difference can we make? What kind of impact? And what's great about what you do is it's every day you are taking action to impact. But now we've multiplied and replicated, Dani, as much as we possibly can, or as much as you possibly can, by making 70 more like-minded individuals or affiliated individuals that actually are out to, create this conclusion in people's lives, this ease of passing. As I went along on one of the pickups when I was in California.
Yeah.
And what I experienced there was just the ease of the individual being there for the ones that were, it wasn't an actual euthanasia that I went to, because the young pup, and it was a fairly young dog, is something degenerative, or another veterinarian mixed the wrong medications or something. Yeah, they knew it was coming, but by the time that we actually arrived, the dog had passed. But the person that I went with, she comforted them the entire time, just by being there and letting them express themselves, and encouraging them to know that others do care, and that it's not just a dog, right? It's a living, or it was a living, breathing thing that had feelings and everything else. So there was a great deal of value to know when somebody does come to offer love, right?
Right. Yeah. That's what we do. And we do it for the why. We do it for the one purpose. That one purpose drives everything, which is the human-animal bond. We don't sell medicine, particularly in veterinary medicine. Medicine isn't our product by any means. We are a service industry in veterinary medicine, and our product is the human-animal bond. That's what we do. That's what we do. Without that bond, they're not calling us. They're not under the sheets.
Right.
They're not loving the pet,
Right. If they're in the barn, they're probably going to be discovered in a week, right?
Yeah, and I grew up on a farm, so it's a different way. Let me tell you, they had a great life out there, and it's completely different. But the bond is different when there are your family member, and they can be a family member, in many different ways, whether or not they're outside or inside or whatever. But that is the difference, is when they are part of the family, and what do they deserve, and what can we come up with, and what do we think is the best for them. And a lot of anthropomorphism that goes into it, but it's still appropriate. That's the only way we know how to be,
Right. That's the best way to adopt them into our tribe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gives us our opportunity to reflect ourselves back on them as well. Okay.
Which we do.
My dog totally understands me.
Well, yeah. Some families that we work with, they reflect very well back from the dog, and the dog reflects them too. And yeah, it's that one collective consciousness. I don't think that excludes animals by any means.
Yeah, I definitely. I think it's a wonderful and beautiful service that you offer, as well as how it kind of brings a new enlightenment to people's mindsets. And with all of it, it's such a wonderful, purpose-driven company that anyone that's experiencing, specific, symptoms in the family, that they're likely to lose one of their loved ones, one of their
furry family.
We'll just refer to them as our children.
Right, furry children.
Yeah, we'll go with the furry children, and not the wolf boys of Mexico. We're actually talking about canine and feline and other, hell, even bovine, really, if it really comes down to it, right?
Heck yeah. Yeah. Well, and I have a hairless dog, so it's a little bit of a misnomer with me though too, because she doesn't have any hair. So she's I just call her my canine child. She's a four-legged child.
Yeah, so you definitely hold the same position as far as the love and acceptance into the family. Would you say, what kind of advice would you offer anyone wanting to move towards developing a company, especially like for you, you had to overcome quite a bit. in the sense that there was the taboo of death, and that there's still, it's kind of like even in veterinarian and veterinarian practices, I'm sure that there's still a taboo over euthanasia. There's almost certainly something there because of the lack of maturity we have over death. So for me, that's where taboos usually arise, is lacking maturity. What would you say, advice-wise, what would you offer people that want to start something?
That's a really good question. And I've had a lot of friends and close people come to me with ideas. And it's interesting because I feel that far too often, someone that does have an idea that they want to do, a problem that they want to solve in life, they end up listening too much to what other people are saying about it. And they're the one with the idea. They're the one with the why, the purpose, and that deep down. And then you've got a whole bunch of other people outside saying, well, what about this? And you should do this, and you should do that, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's a good idea, and sometimes it's not a good idea. But if I think I maybe talked to 3 or 4 really close friends of mine before starting Lap of Love. Like, I didn't really care what anyone else thought. I really didn't. And it wasn't like it wasn't I don't care, therefore I'm not going to ask. It was just, I have to do this. I'm going to do this right now and get this honed down really, really well. And then I'm going to ask about this and ask about that. But I didn't let anyone else invade that purposeful space. No one else got in that space, because that's where the magic was. And I trusted myself enough to know. So I see people getting a mishmash too much of other people's ideas, and then the whole entire idea in the first place has been lost. Like one purpose, solve one problem, and that's where a niche comes in. That's where greatness is that one problem that's there. And it just takes one solution, right? Like the good man or woman in your life. It just takes one to like change your entire life. So do it well. Don't mosaic into someone else's ideas and everything. You just got to do that one thing and stop asking other people's opinions. Like, just stop. Stop. Because everyone's going to have an opinion about it. Absolutely. Absolutely. But stop.
So if you're going to ask an opinion, ask your mentor's opinion.
Ask your mentor a question. Not, hey, I have this, I don't know, like idea for a fold out table or something like that. But say, hey, this nut and bolt, this fits here. How about this? Does this work or that work? Not about the table. You know what I mean? It's about a specific question, a specific problem that mentor can help with you. Not about the concept, not about that invasive, purposeful space. So that's my theory.
Well, that's actually a beautiful distinction, though, because even then it's like, by me saying ask your mentor, or ask him for his opinion or her for her opinion, it's still a constructedly irresponsible statement in the sense that it wasn't descriptive enough. And you added the description in perfectly. Ask the specific question rather than the whole concept opinion, as people will infect you with their opinions. And like you did, is just you stopped listening and decided that you were going to do your thing no matter what other people thought. The people in your life are the ones most likely to pull you down are the ones closest to you, in most cases for people. The ones that you think believe in you the most are sometimes the ones that believe in you the least, or would rather see you not do it again.
Yeah, all they see is your weaknesses, because they know them, because they're close to you, and then they just hone in on those. But my mom told me a long time ago, she said, you wouldn't care what people thought about you if you knew how infrequently they did. How powerful is that?
Your mother's a wise woman.
I'm telling you. Very much. Very much. Yep, you wouldn't care what people thought about you if you knew how infrequently they did. Yeah, and I think about that a lot. It's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that belongs on a bumper sticker. Could even assign that to the politicians, but I won't get into that. Yeah. So, and it's a wonderful gift that you offered. And I hope that anybody who watches this video really does understand the gift that you did offer. Like, what you said is extremely powerful. And if they really listen to every word and fill out the entire meaning behind what you're stating, so they really like live inside of that statement rather than just hear it and decide to make it a quotable cliche, but really listen to what you offered. Know the author, because if you recall my position on quotes. I'd rather know the author rather than whatever nonsense people are using the quote for. But regardless, that's a digression. But what you said is extremely powerful. Now, and it is one of those, like listening to other people, it was one of my greatest challenges in the beginning, because I cared so much when people asked me my opinion, to really give them a thought out, as unbiased as I could, perspective on it. And that's just the way that I work. And I always have worked that way, even from the moment I can recall as it being a child. But I was expecting and hoping that people also would do the same thing in the moments when I asked them, like, those intimate moments when I'd ask them questions about my actions. And a lot of times people infected my experience with their fears and even their excitements.
Yes, absolutely.
I find that when somebody gives you an excitement, an exciting thought that excites you, and say, maybe I should add this in, this little bitty thing, I can add that in and I could really make a big difference with it. But you weren't the author of that thought, and all of what it takes, the legs under the idea, aren't there. And if it's too attached to your core idea, it can be the faltering part, so you get excited about it and you keep, like as a magnet, pulling in all of these little excited ideas. And before you know it, you don't have even the confidence to try to stabilize your original idea, because there's not enough experience or education to do so. So just as you did, is really just focus solid on, this is my path, this is my thing. Your opinions may be valuable, but it's not going to be weighed in such a way that it affects what I'm doing. I think that's a beautiful lesson that you set forth right there. If people really just were to follow through with what you're saying,
it is, and it goes. I'm sorry. It goes very far, and it literally goes into medicine. It goes into how we practice medicine, and for us, it's always been support the human-animal bond. Period. Mm-hmm. That has been our why, and it goes, and that even means that we have to take on some negative emotion as veterinarians. That means that there's good and bad with that, but you have to take the good and bad, because you know that the support of the human-animal bond is where the magic happens for us in our company. That's what it is. So even when we bring on franchisees, it's we have to have the proper scheduling and the proper personality and the proper training and the proper everything, the proper doctor bag. Everything has to be there to support the human-animal bond from the beginning, and that's our why. And it's worked for us. Has it been perfect? No, of course not. There's stuff I do differently, of course. But that's also where magic has happened, when we had to redirect what we were doing and do it some other way. But yeah, it's you're exactly right. That's where it happens. Yeah,
that's a beautiful thing. And Dani, I'll call you Dr. Dani. Is there, we're coming close to the end of the recording here. So is there anything that we could offer? There is I'm not sure if your screen will have it in the bottom right. It may be the bottom left, but it'll say links. Do you see anything that says links?
I don't. No, not me.
Okay. I'll see about possibly adding a link for Lap of Love at a later date. Actually, let's see. Nope. It's just given the links itself. Like, so if we wanted to take a link off of this and put it someplace. So in the future, we'll add in some contact, some way for people to contact Lap of Love for, helping out with their end of life care for their babies. So we'll work with that. I'm definitely very grateful that you decided to join me on the show today. And I also learned a lot. Yeah. And thank you. And I will obviously ask you back onto the show, either expanding on this, especially if we get any from the feedback we get from the show, I'll share with you as well. And we'll see about if there's something for us to redirect or address, then obviously we'll do so. And with that, thank you, Dani McVety, Dr. Dani McVety of veterinarian medicine. Yes. And thank you for being on the show. Is there anything you'd like to add in closing?
No, thank you. I just thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking that this is an important enough and part of your show. And our website is lapoflove.com. So that's the website. But yeah, I really appreciate your interest in this part of it. It's a unique topic for me to be talking on. So I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Chad.
Oh, you're very welcome. If you get a chance, check out my video on dying healthy. That's the one I recorded yesterday.
Ah, okay. Very good.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, I enjoyed that one as well. But with that, everyone, thank you for joining us on the show today. As always, you're welcome to leave any feedback or comments in the comment section. Also, if you want to contact us or if you want to contact me, it's chadbrochures@gmail.com. Again, this is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, and this has been the episode with Dr. Dani McVety. All right, thank you guys very much, and thank you again, Dani. I look forward to having you on the show again.
Likewise. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.